Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to our FabFems Friday webinar with the focus today on STEM and energy. We have a fabulous lineup throughout June and July, and we hope you can join us weekly for panel discussions with current students, alumni, and STEM role models from our community. I'm Ariba, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an intern with Women in STEM within the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement at the University of Texas at Austin. Today we have Emily helping us with the Q&A portion of our webinar. You can find many of our FabFems Friday webinar panelists and more amazing STEM role models in the FabFems directory, a national database of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics professions who are inspiring role models for young women. The FabFems directory is managed by the National Girls Collaborative Project and is designed to help increase career awareness and interest in STEM. STEM role models can create a FabFems profile and indicate how you want to be connected, either just by serving as a role model with your profile online so students can read about your experience, or by volunteering to be contacted via email or other options. Students, you can search by a keyword or a variety of factors such as zip code, field of work, ethnicity, or interest of engineering. There are lots of different options, and Emily is going to go ahead and throw that link in the chat for you guys. We will also be adding all our FabFems Friday webinars to our WiSTEM YouTube channel and other videos as well to help future and current students. So be sure to subscribe to our channel to get notified when new videos are added, and we'll throw that link in the chat as well. Today, our focus is on STEM and energy. We will have each panelist share some quick introductions here in a moment to get us started. And then after introductions, we'll have a facilitated panel with some pre-selected questions, and then we'll move into taking some questions from the audience as well. So attendees, please make sure you're using that Q&A portion to submit your questions throughout the webinar. So we'll start with those quick introductions. If each of our panelists could just say their name, pronouns, hometown, your major or degree, your year in school or the company or organization you're with, and a hobby or out of school or work activity. So whoever wants to get started can go ahead and jump in.
Hi, my name's Melanie Johnson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Sugar Land, Texas, which is on the southwest side of Houston. I have 2 degrees in electrical engineering. Oh, sorry, not the year that I got them. And I currently work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Engineer Research and Development Center Construction Engineering Research Laboratory. It's the Army. We like acronyms, and we like to embed our acronyms. Outside of what I do for work, I sew, I crochet, like to make things. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Annette Sluter. I actually live up in Williston, North Dakota. I graduated from UT in 2010 with a degree in chemical engineering. I currently work for Marathon Petroleum. I am a pipeline operations engineer. I've been there for about 9 years. Outside of work, I have 2 small children. They are 5 and 3, and I have a 3rd one on the way within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So pretty busy.
Congratulations on that. My name is Stephanie Tabiji. My hometown is Austin, Texas, but I am now living in Houston, Texas. I majored in mechanical engineering, and since I graduated with my Bachelor in Science in Mechanical Engineering, I joined ExxonMobil about 12 years ago, and I have been supporting their global projects organization. Outside of work, I too am a mom of 2 young kids. I have a set of twins that are 3 years old. And so when I have free time, I am in group fitness classes, and I like kickboxing and dance.
Thank you. We're so excited to have all of you here today and to learn from your experiences. So let's hear a bit more of each of your career paths. Can you share how you chose your major and how you got to your current position, as well as how it connects with energy?
Sure. So I initially thought I would do computing as an electrical engineer. I took a lot of computer architecture and embedded systems classes. But what I found through a series of summer internships is that I really loved electricity and electrical distribution and power lines and how we deliver the energy that we need through our transmission and distribution system to how people use it and how to make those systems more efficient, more sustainable. So with that in mind, I went to graduate school at the University of Illinois after graduating from UT Austin. And when I finished my master's, I started work at the Construction Engineering Research Laboratory. So it might seem a little bit strange that I work for the Army Corps of Engineers. Most people would think that the Corps of Engineers builds bridges and locks and dams and waterways and that kind of great stuff. But what you might not realize is that the Army Corps of Engineers also is responsible for all of the infrastructure that's owned by the Army. And the Army is one of the largest real estate owners in the world. So at every Army installation, it's basically a small city, right? They have homes, they have schools, they have office buildings, they even have Burger Kings, McDonald's, and bowling alleys. And all of that requires electrical distribution infrastructure. Coupled with the fact that when the power goes out, the Army can't quit, the distribution infrastructure on those installations has a lot of special requirements, a lot of special needs. So what I do in my role with the Corps is help design microgrids or power systems for the installations that can island and operate without support from the commercial power system. So the goal right now is that by 2035, every Army installation, and there are 130 of them worldwide, will have a microgrid system that supports its critical loads for 14 days. That's a lot of energy. It's a lot of controls and communications and intelligence we have to build into our grids. And it's a really challenging, aggressive goal that the Army has set to build these systems. So I really love that I get to work on these fascinating problems, and there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of ways we don't know exactly how we're going to solve this, including increasing pressure to electrify everything that happens on the base, right? We want to move towards buildings that are more electric and using less fossil fuels internally, like less natural gas, as well as electrifying our vehicle fleets, both the non-tactical vehicle fleet, we would say in the Army, that's the trucks and cars that drive around on the base, but also the tactical vehicles that will operate in the field, and they have really different charging requirements. So all of that is part of the problem space that we're working in. Over. Thank you.
So I'm on the other side. I like fossil fuels. But yeah, so I did chemical engineering. Honestly, my dad really encouraged me to get into engineering just based on my interests in high school. I chose chemical because I'm just a very methodical kind of process-based thinker. And yeah, so I did my bachelor's in chemical. I finished in 2010, got hired on with Schlumberger. They're a huge oil field service company, and they're the ones that brought me up to North Dakota from Texas. I spent 3 years in the field as a hydraulic fracturing engineer. Basically for 3 years, I was spending 20 hours a day on frac jobs, spending my life living 2 weeks at a time with a week off. It was a very tough lifestyle, but it gave me a very good base of knowledge for the oil and gas industry. Basically, as an engineer, if you're interested in oil and gas, I highly recommend anybody to go into the service industry, be it Schlumberger, Halliburton, or the dozens of other service companies that are out there. When we see that on an engineer's resume, we're like, okay, you know how to do the hard work in the field. So I did that for 3 years, and then I switched over to the pipeline side. I've been there since then. I do a little bit of everything. I'm an operations engineer, so just general support of our day-to-day operations. Our pipeline system up here is, some of the pipelines are 50 to 60 years old, been around for a long time, but North Dakota really boomed. There's been 3 oil booms up here, but the most recent one was 2010 to 2016-ish. And our company moves about 2 million barrels a day on our system. I don't know what our production numbers in the state are right now, but we're constantly looking for new ways to get oil where it needs to go in the country. We also move natural gas. We have 2 plants that we own that make all kind of natural gas products that we then ship out on rail. So yeah, I I maintain our hydraulic model of our system. So I use a lot of just basic hydraulics as far as, can we get oil from point A to point B? Can we do it efficiently? Can we bring on new production and still fit it in our pipelines? You know, why aren't we getting oil from point A to point B efficiently? Just kind of basic troubleshooting. I've done some capital projects where it's just bringing on new well sites every couple of months. And just a lot of other just random projects, which is really like, I really enjoy being on the pipeline side because it's something different every week, really.
Okay. So how did I choose my major? And I think the second question, right, was how I got to my current position. So I'd say at a really young age, I always excelled in math, physics, and doing puzzles. And so my teachers, my family, they started pushing me towards engineering. When I got out of high school, I was 17, 18 years old, and I had no idea what engineering was. I didn't know what I wanted to do being an engineer. So I actually went into mechanical engineering, as I knew I liked, you know, like working with my hands and like seeing like physical things be done. But at the same time, like that major was very broad. And so it opened up a lot of various industries that you could potentially go into. When I was at the University of Texas, I took part of the exchange program with the Stockholm, KTH Stockholm University, Technical University. And that was a semester-long program where I was actually able to study renewable energy. And so at first I was like, oh, this is just a cool experience. I'm going to go abroad. I'm going to live in, I want to go travel Europe and everything. But that was my first exposure to the energy industry and what it could offer. And at the time, I thought I was actually really interested in aerospace engineering. And so I was like, ooh, windmills are cool. They're like airplanes, but you know, their wings turn sideways. And so that got me interested into like wind energy. And then from there, I came back into the University of Texas, and the University of Texas has a really lasting sort of relationship with ExxonMobil. And I actually saw ExxonMobil at the expo, the Career Expo, learned a little bit about the company, and then decided to do an internship to just sort of see what it was all about. Ended up really liking the people I was working with, liking my experience there. So I hired on full time. So now I've been with ExxonMobil 12 years, variety of roles, most of which are like project management related. And so ExxonMobil as a company, we produce fuels and chemicals to supply the energy demand that the world needs. And we're trying to do so in a sustainable and responsible manner. And so there's just lots of different opportunities, and I think we'll go into our day-to-day work and what we do in that space. But everything from getting very technical to, just like Annette was saying, being out in the field, boots on the ground, you know, turning valves and like being all up in the equipment, to project management, to doing research, to looking at some of these new technologies in the energy transition space. It's a sort of company that has it all because of its size. And so that's what's shown me to stay here and work at ExxonMobil these last 12 years.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear the different avenues you guys have taken and the different opportunities that are available within energy. So let's dive deeper into your STEM work in energy. Can you tell us about a specific project or product you've worked on that can give our audience a glimpse into your day-to-day work?
So keep the same order, huh? So in my role at the Corps, I have kind of two main areas that I work in. I'm a research team lead, so I have a research portfolio that we're working on day to day, and I'm also embedded in project teams within the Corps of Engineers, where I provide like subject matter expertise on microgrids, because they're really different, and they're not they don't work the same way as our traditional distribution systems. So right now, we have an in that sort of more engineering support role. I'm going to dig into that a little bit more, I think, because the research role it changes. It's, you know, it's sort of like you make your own adventure in research. So in that role, on a daily basis, what we're doing is looking at the documentation and how the infrastructure is put together on an Army installation. We're looking at how do we collect data about their critical loads and how much electricity they're using. And from there, we work on developing conceptual and preliminary designs for these microgrid systems. Now, one of the weird things about working for the government is that almost always the detailed design is going to get put out on a contract, but it's our job to sort of review what comes back and make sure that it's a valid design, that everything's feasible, that the costs are reasonable. And so there's an element of reviewing and making sure that the government is getting what it's paying for, basically. I think it was interesting listening to Stephanie and Annette talk, because a common theme I heard is that what part of what drew us to the energy field is that we liked being in the field and getting out there. And that's very true for me too. What I hated about computing was sitting behind a computer all the time. And what's nice about working in power systems is that you get to go outside, you get to go in substations. And so as we work through these designs for microgrids, we're out in substations validating what's written down versus what's physically present, making sure that all that lines up so that we have a good idea of what we're going to build and how we're going to build it and how much it's going to cost. Yeah, so in terms of like really interesting microgrid projects that are out there, without going too deep in being a power systems nerd, there are very few microgrids right now that operate without like a spinning generator, meaning something that's running on diesel or natural gas or a big turbine. There are very few that don't have one of those. But one of the Army's microgrids that's currently in construction in California is a system with no spinning generation. It is solely photovoltaics and energy storage. And that particular project posed a lot of really unique challenges in how we design it, because we had to consider, like, when we experience a power outage and everything goes dark, turning a power system back on is pretty challenging. We have to account for how much energy it's going to take to energize all of the system equipment, not just run all the loads. And so when you're working without the buffer of a spinning generator, that has to be planned for in a lot more detail. So it's just kind of a more specific example of the kind of problems that we're solving. And what we're doing, you know, there's no design method. There's no, we're writing the criteria and the standards as we go. And so we're really solving these problems as we come across them and how we're going to address them in our distribution system. So that's probably one of the things I like the most. Over. I hope that, I think that dug in enough. Over.
Yeah. No, my day to day, like I said earlier, is different. I do also have the opportunity to spend really as much time in the field as I want to, which is great. Let's see, and a really interesting project. Well, one that I like to highlight early on that I did at Marathon was implementing a pretty extensive leak detection system on our pipeline. You know, just a basic mass balance. What's going in must come out. I feel like pipelines get a bad rap sometimes in the national media, that they're unsafe, and that we don't know what's going on, but it couldn't be farther from the truth. We have very smart meters that we install in these systems to look at what's coming in and out at every second of the day, and it's constantly being monitored. So I installed, I want to say, 30 of those meters a few years ago all over Western North Dakota. And then I got to help tune the system. So, you know, it's not always running at a steady state depending on how much production we have going on over here versus over here and what our demand is. So I got to work with some really smart measurement engineers and just really learn that system. And from my experience with that project, I've kind of become the local leak detection subject matter expert. So if anything's ever looking goofy, I get called initially. And thankfully that's not very often, but it does happen. And so we have very quick response times to issues with our leak detection. Just like to put that out there. Other interesting projects, well, kind of like Melanie was saying, we contract out a lot of our actual engineering also when it comes to construction and the electrical side. And so we'll have like a Mustang engineering or somebody like that actually kind of drop the drawings and all the models for a new station. But as somebody that spends a lot of time in the field with our operators, I get to come in then and review it and be like, is this actually operable? Engineers like to think something looks really pretty on their computer program, and then they don't take it out into the field and see if you can actually manipulate that valve. So being that go-between is kind of fun. I'm the good engineer. I'm not the one that gets cursed out later on when they can't operate whatever was built. So I like being on that side of things. I really like building relationships with the operators. That's been something that's always been very important to me since day one, since I was with Schlumberger. I never wanted to be the engineer that was like, well, my book says this should work. I don't want to be that person. I like learning from the operators. I like getting their input. Really, they're the knowledgeable people. They're the ones running this equipment day in and day out. And it's just nice to be a team with them.
I'm going to probably mirror a lot of what Annette and Melanie said. But so all my roles have really all started with an integrated team. So I did want to make that point is in these sort of engineering roles, I think all three of us have, you're never doing anything by yourself, right? You have a diverse team filled with engineering experts, filled with project experts, filled with the operations experts. And I think as I move through my different job roles within ExxonMobil, I've always been part of that team. And so when I hired in out of college, I was what they call a project engineer. And it's a lot of what Annette was saying is working, we have a project. So specifically, I was working on floating production units, so producing conventional oil offshore. And so I had the problem, what do we need to fix? I would work with the engineers to do the design, make sure that it was operable by our operations crew. When it got time to execute, got to go out offshore and be that person there, just sort of overseeing the day-to-day activities, make sure that everything was going as planned. And so that was just a lot of fun. That's a lot of that boots on the ground experience, and probably more of the technical role in projects that we have. And then as I gained more experience, I was put into project manager roles, and a lot of that was very similar. The added component was now I was in charge of people, right? And ensuring that people got home safe. So, you know, we are on these large facilities, like the one I was just talking about, it's offshore, lots of high pressure. So we have to be careful, right, in the work that we're doing. And so ensuring that everyone's doing their work safely and executing that work safely was a big part of my role. And then you continue to have various different roles, but the current role I'm in now is like, I actually get to look at future developments for ExxonMobil and say, oh, how do we design that, right? So what's the right concept for that? Like, how are we going to get more hydrocarbon out of the ground in a safe, reliable, efficient, carbon-friendly way, and help the company come up with those ideas. So I get to be more on the idea generation side of projects, which is a lot of fun. So various roles across the project spectrum, and really, I guess for those interested on the phone, like you can find the things that you like in probably all three of our companies that we have here, in terms of, if you like technical, there's technical work. If you like organizing and doing organization with people, like that's what I like to do. I'm a huge organizer. There's room for you there too. Like, so there's all these different skill sets that are needed to make these big projects happen. And so everyone can find their space and contribute, because there's a lot of great work to be done in the energy industry ahead of us. So.
Thank you so much for sharing. And a quick reminder to our attendees, please make sure you're submitting any questions you have to the Q&A so we can get those answered as well. Our next question is probably one of my favorite questions that we ask, and it's, what inspires you or excites you about the future of STEM and energy?
All these new students that we're getting out of college right now, they're just awesome. I have to say, one of the things that has really gotten me excited, again, in the last couple of years, is as we've brought in summer students, as we're getting new folks coming out of school, I am blown away by how interdisciplinary the engineers that we're seeing come into the core, come into our lab. When I, it was a long time ago, but when I was a student, we must have been more stovepiped in our own colleges, because you guys are coming in here with so many like computer programming skills and mechanical engineers, and it's just really awesome. It makes you guys really, really fun to work with, because when you are in a particular workplace for a long time, like I've been with the Corps for 15 years, you know, we're going to get locked into the way that the Corps of Engineers thinks. And when we get new students in, I love how they ask questions and get me thinking about, well, why do we do it that way? Why are we making that assumption? And maybe we should think about something different. So the new people who are entering the field, I think, are just phenomenal. The other thing I'm really excited about in an Army context is that I am seeing policy finally catch up to where we need to be headed. If you can go Google it, but you'll find a document that came out in 2022 called the Army Climate Strategy, which really pushes not just, well, it pushes Army installations, it pushes Army logistics, and it pushes Army operations all towards mitigations for climate change that will help the Army keep functioning, but also adapt and have less impact overall. And to me, that's really exciting to see, because most of our work focuses very heavily on like energy resilience, right? Having redundancy and backups and making sure that the power never goes out. But adding the extra challenge of like, okay, do that, but do that without adding carbon to the atmosphere. Do that without carbon fuels is it's really an exciting thing in our field. So I know I have petroleum people. I'm not judgmental. It's just if you knew how much energy and fuels the Army, and let's not even get started on the Air Force, because holy smokes over there, it's good. They need to reduce because their impact is so dramatic. It's being more efficient is important in the long run for the Department of Defense. Being more energy efficient and using our fuels more efficiently actually saves people's lives, because we have fewer fuel convoys going out into operations. We have less logistics trail that has to be protected and defended. So it's just that's the kind of direction that I see that's got me all excited to work in this field. Over.
So I think something that came to mind that's pretty like niche to North Dakota, I think, is just creative ways that our energy industry is using, I guess, our products, so to speak. In North Dakota, you know, we have a very low population. Wyoming's the second lowest, and then North Dakota, we have less than 1 million people, and we have a ton of oil and gas production, and just not the customer base to use the gas specifically. And so they've been taking some coal-fired power plants and converting them to natural gas, which is a lot better for the environment. Natural gas burns a lot cleaner. And so it's just been cool to see them take that, the state as a whole, take that initiative and work on those projects, and then also build new, Melanie, I'm sorry, but substations and whatever we need to get energy to the customers in areas like where I live in Williston that have doubled in population in the last 10 years and have had an increased energy demand. We've had some of our bigger natural gas companies like One Oak and I think Kinder Morgan, they've built new power plants, or they've built new gas plants to take in all the gas production, and then they send it across the road over to the substations to power those substations. And I just think that's a really creative solution rather than burning the gas into the atmosphere, because the first 5, 6, 7 years of our latest boom up here, you would just see flares all over the countryside because we had nothing to do with the gas, and that is very wasteful. And so it's nice to see us being creative and just come up with new solutions. There's also cryptocurrency mining operations happening in Western North Dakota using natural gas as fuel. I am not the cryptocurrency mining expert by any means, but just another creative outlet for that gas, I guess, is what I'm getting at. So it's, you know, I feel like oil and gas gets a bad rap as being this literal dinosaur industry that isn't looking at doing anything innovative with oil and gas, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Especially major oil and gas companies like Marathon and ExxonMobil. We're always looking to see what we can do differently in the future.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to echo Melanie and Annette here. I think with the energy demand rising, and just to like to keep the status quo even going forward, but yeah, so but to do that in an environmentally friendly way, it's going to take leaps in technology, right? And so I think what I get really excited about, or what I'm excited about for those on the phone who are looking into going into the energy industry, is it's going to take ideas of everybody. And it doesn't matter what discipline you are: mechanical, chemical, petroleum, computer, I mean, you name it. Like here, we had a government on the phone as well. And so I mean, the policies behind this, right? So it's going to take everybody's ideas and everybody's input to actually propel ourselves forward in this energy transition. And that's what I find really exciting, because I mean, you can come in and innovate. You could be creative. The companies are looking for that. So I think to Annette's point, or even maybe Melanie, like go back 10, 15 years, you have the Army, you have ExxonMobil, you have Marathon. Maybe they were used to doing the way that they've always, gotten oil and gas out of the ground, or the way that they've operated the military. But now everyone's looking for these ways to do what they are doing, but do it in an environmentally friendly way. And so there is this like need for change. There's need for ideas. There's need for creativity. And I find that exciting, because it's just a fun place to be when you get to work with people and work with teams and like make things happen and then be able to see the results. So I think that's really cool for this new generation coming in.
Thank you. So we're going to move into our Q&A portion. So I'm going to pass it off to Emily so she can get those questions started.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and remind attendees to drop any questions that they have into our Q&A. And so we do have one right now. And so this is to everyone. What is one thing that you've done in your field, such as like a project that has been your favorite, or something that you're just very proud of? Yeah.
Okay, mine's another long acronym. It's called the Smart Power Infrastructure Demonstration for Energy Reliability and Security, or SPIDERS. So SPIDERS was the first Department of Defense microgrid demonstration program. It ran from about 2011 to 2015, and I was one of the assistant technical managers for the program. We built a small microgrid at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam out in Hawaii that served a water treatment facility that was critical to Hickam Air Force Base's operations. And then we built a second microgrid at Fort Carson in Colorado Springs that served some critical loads and missions there. And finally, we built a microgrid at Camp Smith, which is out on Oahu. It's actually like if you're standing in Pearl Harbor and you look up the mountain, Camp Smith's up there. So what's really, so the series of projects, we started with really basic small microgrids, and we gradually added capability and capacity and complexity to the systems to when we got to Camp Smith, we had about let's see if I can do the math in my, yeah, we had 6 generators plus photovoltaics and some minimal energy storage. 2015 energy storage is still really, really expensive, so we didn't have very much. But that microgrid did a demonstration where it ran islanded from the grid for 72 hours, and it did it twice. And those programs, we learned so much about what was going to make microgrids successful for our installations, and they are foundational to how we think about design, how we think about implementation, and even like the contracting procedure to get these things built. But also, one of the really critical lessons we learned is about how to sustain and maintain these systems, because they don't fit the traditional box, right? It's in some ways, microgrids are more of a control system than a power system. And so learning what it was going to take to maintain and operate that control system and the information system that overlays the distribution system in a microgrid in the DoD and Army context was really eye-opening. Every single one of those demonstration projects ended up in their failure mode in the end was sustainment. And that was the challenge. So sorry. Now I feel like I'm giving a talk on microgrids, but that's a project I'm really proud of because it was the foundation and because of the knowledge base that we generated that forms the basis for everything that we're building now. Over.
So Marathon Petroleum is midstream and downstream, so pipelines and refineries, and a big one of our, I guess, kind of mottos is we operate at the pleasure of the community. And several years ago, we had a group of landowners. The easement for the pipeline basically had expired, and because of several changes that had happened in North Dakota with who was managing that pipeline, they hadn't gotten paid for a while. So obviously they were not happy. And so we spent a few years trying to make these landowners happy. Not me personally. This is just a little bit of background. But at the end of the day, we couldn't. And we had to shut down a 40-mile segment of our pipeline that directly supplies our refinery in Mandan, North Dakota. So we had to find a different pathway for, I'm going to say, about 40,000 barrels of oil a day. And I got tasked with being a part of the team to try to redirect that oil around our existing system without building any new pipelines, because building new pipelines is a whole nother adventure. So had to take what we had and see if we can make it work, which was a really unique challenge in the sense that, like I said, this is a 50, 60-year-old pipeline system that's run in one basic manner for a long time. So whenever we have to like switch things around, switch directions, people get antsy. They're like, we've never run it that way before. I don't know, even though the physical pathway's there. So that was at the end of 2020. By the end of the year, we had to figure this out because the landowners wanted us done. So when we did, we made it work. We didn't lose any of our volumes at the refinery at the end of it. We had to do very minimal construction, take out a couple check valves, that only flow one way or the other here and there. Speaking of computer programming, those engineers had to do a lot of work to make the systems flow different ways and communicate well with each other. But I ran that project, and that was really fun. It's fun to see a challenge like that where people just, especially the really old school people you work with, they're just like, no, that's not going to work. And to, spend a couple months with them and prove them wrong at the end of the day. And we've been running in that manner since the end of 2020 without any major issues. And so it's just been kind of cool to see, like, we didn't lose any production, so to speak. We were able to keep all of our customers happy at the end of the day. And yeah, it was nothing super technical. It just took a bit of teamwork and creative thinking. And I just think that's where we as engineers can really excel.
All right. So for me, when the question was asked, the first thing that came to my mind is I get really proud and excited when I feel like I impact people. And so when I was 25, I think it was probably my second big project that I was working with Exxon. I was a project engineer, project manager. It was a smaller scale project or power generation project in Chad, which is a country in Africa. And so similar, I think it was Annette, or who was talking about these like long, hard shifts that you have to go through, and you go 2 to 4 weeks at a time, and you're working these 12-hour days, and you're working inside the operation. I showed up and I didn't have a big team, and I had to learn how to influence the operations team that was there to help get my power generation project completed. And it was a personal accomplishment, right? It's like you go in, you don't really know what you're doing, or you don't know who to talk to. And you amaze yourself sometimes with when you're thrown into a situation and you have to like have you're trying to have a positive outcome and you want your project to succeed. You sort of do things and then you sort of realize like, wow, I'm more than capable, or I get stretched beyond my capability and I learn and all that. So I created this, what I almost call like it's a family, right? You create this family with the people who are there with you, boots on the ground, making this happen. And then when it does, and you look back and you're like, wow, like I did that and I helped integrate this. And like, I worked the people side to be able to do that. That was really like a proud moment, but also talking about reaching out to people when you get the opportunity to do some of these type of roles, which might seem hard if you're like, okay, I'm traveling away from family or my friends, or, you get these opportunities. You also get the opportunities to reach out to those communities. So at a young age, I was very fortunate to be exposed to different parts of the world and the opportunity to then do outreach to those as part of ExxonMobil. And that just in itself, like when I look back and I think about like the times that I just like came back home and I was like, wow, it was when I got to go, help kids at an orphanage or bring water to like people in the community who are then coming in to help us operate these fields that we have. So this sort of sense of family and connecting to the community and everything, I think like that's what gets me jazzed up. And I think across 3 companies that are represented here, you have that opportunity to like take engineering and like take it to the people around you. And I find that really inspiring. So.
All right, yeah. I think we might have time for one more question, possibly. Okay, cool. Yeah, so another question, just because I'm also curious, do you guys have any examples of of any struggles that you've had either in your STEM like education or even just like getting into your like career field, or like things that you've struggled with during then at all?
Ooh, so for me, I have occasionally, I've come to dislike the words imposter syndrome, but it can be a very real feeling, especially when you're new. And if you choose any career, it doesn't matter if it's STEM or otherwise, when you start, when you're new and you're out there, you're in your first internship or your first job after college, it's not that you don't belong there, it's that you're new and you have to figure out, you have to find your place in the organization, find your niche. It's going to be different than being in school, and settling in and figuring out who you are in a workplace. It just takes some time. And don't get to thinking that you don't know enough or you don't have an opinion that's valid. When you're fresh out of school, you are as relevant and up to date as you are ever going to be. Everything after that is going to be effort that you put in specifically to stay relevant and up to date. And so what you're bringing into the workplace is fresh perspective. Ask your questions, give your opinion, take the feedback from the older engineers. They've been there a long time. They do actually know some stuff occasionally, sometimes. But don't let it make you doubt what you know and what you're seeing. Be there, and so that's something I struggled with a lot in my early career, and even now sometimes. As microgrids have gotten more prominent, I've been asked to give presentations and briefings up echelons in the Army, and it can be really intimidating. And so I would just say, just remember, you have the same education, you have the same background and basis and foundations that everyone else in the workplace has, and you just are going to grow into it over time. And don't get to thinking that it's you. It's not. It's just a process. Over.
So for anyone interested in going into a more field-based career, it can be very harsh, I think would be a decent word, right out of school. I always felt very protected, I guess, at UT and encouraged as a woman in engineering. And when I got to North Dakota, that was not the case initially at Schlumberger. With the guys I was working with, they were like, "What are you doing here? Why are you not at home? Why are you not getting married and having babies? You don't need to be out here." And so that was a little bit of, I just didn't even know that in 2010 people still thought that way, but they do, and they still do now. So just be ready to just interact with people that are different than you, and then at the end of the day, I mean, you don't have to do it in any kind of brazen manner, but just prove them wrong. Just say, okay, great, that's your opinion, but I've worked really hard to get here, and I'm going to show you that I belong here. And so I've come across a lot of people like that over my career, not so much in the last 5 years or so, I'd say, but especially straight out of school, just lots of just why are you doing this? But on the flip side, you can meet some very interesting people. Just be open-minded to these people that you're interacting with that come from completely different backgrounds than you. You just don't know who you're going to meet. I met my husband working at Schlumberger. He has a background in diesel mechanics. Now he's a first responder, but you know, we are come from very different parts of the country, different backgrounds. And I just would have never guessed that's who I would have ended up with 15 years ago, but life has a funny way of working out. So I like to tell people, just be open-minded. I know we like to think, especially in a place like Austin, that we're pretty open-minded, but it's to people that you just don't interact with in a place like Austin. And you can learn a lot from them, and you can teach them a lot too.
Those are both very relevant answers to me as well. So I guess just to add in, you're going to have multiple struggles throughout your career, and you go through seasons of life, right? So you could be working in hardship locations, you could be getting married, you could be having your first family. And there's always, for me, been this dynamic of like, okay, how do I effectively balance my career along with my personal life? And how do I do that well? And then I found that through my experience, what's gotten me through all those different seasons has been having a support network of people who I can go and talk to, I can go and vent to, I can help guide me back if I sort of wander off my path. Because at the end of the day, I think to be successful both in your home life and at your career, you need to bring your full self to work, right? Or to whatever you're doing. And you can't do that alone, right? And so having that support network, having a clear communication, maybe with your supervisor, or fostering those relationships so that if something is coming up in your life, you could talk to somebody and get help and input on how to work through it. And that way it keeps you propelling forward in both spheres of whatever's going on with you. So, but yeah, so I think that would sort of be my struggles and my advice. I think that came out more as advice, but is just continue to build and foster those relationships. If you have friends in college that you graduate with and you guys go to the same city, like make an effort to stay connected. They're going to go through these same phases of life as you, and having those people to rely on and talk to is has been invaluable for me. So.
Thank you. We have reached the end of our webinar, and I hope all of our audience members have learned a lot from our fabulous panelists about STEM pathways and energy. So be sure to keep exploring, and we'll add all those links to the chat again. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our amazing panelists for sharing their experience. We look forward to seeing everyone at our next FabFems Friday, which will be next Friday, where we will be doing STEM role models speed networking. And you'll get to connect directly with STEM role models from all kinds of different industries and backgrounds. So be sure to watch your email and our social medias for links and details about that. So thank you again, and have a great weekend, everyone.